The governor has said publicly that he's not unwilling to talk about health care benefits with the unions, but that his proposal would save more money, about $870 million a year by 2014. It has to do with the tracking of the storms, which didn't hit the beaches as hard. So as a result, the quality of the sand and the water are really in very good shape. Police established zones where undercover teams had determined crime hotspots. From there, officers were brought in, leading to the 176 arrests.
Now, the three candidates are in Elizabeth tonight, awaiting returns. That's where we find our Briana Vannozzi, who's with that campaign. And Briana, how's the insurgent campaign feeling tonight? They come in off the streets feeling confident or no? What are you finding there?
Jim, they are feeling confident. A lot of supporters have started to pour into the room now. The energy level is really high, and there's a buzz around the room that there's a real fight on their hands here in the 20th District, and that could these political upstarts pull off an upset? With me now is one of the assembly candidates, Carlos Cedeno. He is an Elizabeth City Councilman, former Board of Education member. At this hour, about 17,000 doors have been knocked on, about 10,000 phone calls from what I understand. What are you hearing in terms of turnout?
And we go to her live now in Union. And Bree, it looks like you may have found one of the few places in New Jersey where you can go to cool off.
Oh yeah, I just had my feet in there a few minutes ago to try to cool down. Sprinkler parks like this one and cooling centers were open all around the state today. Municipal pools, though, are still closed because, remember, even though we're seeing these high temperatures, we're still not technically in the summer season. And earlier today, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone enjoying this heat as much as these kids are right now. If you were outside today, you felt it.
We got some water up there. We've polished off about 8 gallons so far and probably another 8 to go.
Temperatures may have only reached the 90s, but combined humidity made it feel more like 100. From every corner of the state, residents did their best to keep it cool today. The National Weather Service says it takes 3 consecutive days of these temperatures to make a heat wave. But don't tell that to those who brave the heat to work outdoors. Road crews, construction, and even landscaping were still in full swing. The health department is advising people to stay indoors in an air-conditioned environment if possible, and warns that the elderly, sick, and children are most at risk. More than a dozen schools around the state even closed early following heat warnings, including Jackson Memorial High School in Ocean County.
I've been over there in warm weather. It's very uncomfortable. It really impedes health and safety issues that we believe for the Jackson students.
Officials also say it's best to drink water over any other beverage during excessive heat, but a little water ice doesn't hurt either. Gonna try and find some air conditioning to sit in for a little bit?
Of course. It's way too hot out here to be sitting outside.
And there's always a few who seem to cope better than others. We found Jerry Sleven coolly gathering carts outside the Home Depot in Bloomfield. He says it's easy to deal with the high temps.
Drink a lot of water. Keep it hydrated.
I see it there in your pocket.
Yeah.
So heat doesn't bother you then?
Not too much, no.
Inside, it was a dash to pick up that last-minute AC unit.
You would have thought that the heat would have came like maybe in July, not so much in June, being as though spring is like really just started, last month? And it's just hot as I don't know what out there.
Tomorrow is when the oppressive heat is expected to set in. Jersey City schools have already announced that they plan to close early, and emergency management offices say they're prepared for this weather. For now, most of the state remains under an excessive heat warning. That's the latest. Live in Union, I'm Briana Vannozzi. Jim, I'll send it back to you.
All right. A massive manhunt is on in North Jersey after a Newark police officer is gunned down. Authorities say the off-duty officer was killed as he was buying pizza in a restaurant last night. He becomes another victim in the Brick City's escalating violence. Briana Vannozzi is in our Newark bureau now with the very latest. Briana?
Jim, it happened around 9:45 last night. The officer, William Johnson, is a 16-year veteran of the department. He was working for the communications unit, overseeing video surveillance footage, and he was the father of 2 daughters. Authorities said today they believe this was a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. 45-year-old William Johnson was off duty in plain clothes and waiting for his order at the counter of this restaurant in the South Ward of Newark. That's when authorities say a vehicle pulled up and fired multiple shots through the window, fatally wounding the officer and injuring 2 others.
We are here today, and I am here today, to assure our community that this investigation is going to be conducted methodically, thoroughly, deliberatively, and calmly until justice is achieved.
Officials offered little detail on the investigation today, but say they're reviewing all video surveillance footage. Authorities believe someone inside the pizza shop was the target, but it wasn't Officer Johnson.
He is from our city. He lived in Newark, New Jersey. He was one of our own. He's up from the bricks. And this guy who stood for us, who dedicated his professional career to protecting us, was now killed right on our streets.
By late this morning, the restaurant was back to business as usual. Only a missing window and a few dried bloodstains gave indication of any foul play here the night before. Adris Naheem's brothers own the shop.
You weren't working last night? I wasn't working, unfortunately. I'm happy that I wasn't working.
Do you ever work the overnight?
Yeah, sometimes. It gets crowded in here, but nothing something like this. Like, they just yell, screaming, and they just leave.
In the neighborhood, residents were saddened but not shocked.
How many more kids, how many more police officers is it going to take for us to come together and stop all this craziness?
My brother called me and he said they was just shooting, so I was concerned. So I drove down here right before they put the tape up, and they blocked me, and I was here for like 10 hours last night, for like 6 in the morning. But my mom was up here, she was asleep, she said she heard 3 shots, and my little brother said he heard 6 shots altogether.
A 19-year-old woman and a 21-year-old man were also shot. She was released from the hospital, and he's listed in stable condition. Authorities called the incident a heinous crime that cuts through the core of the community.
He worked for me when I was a commander of the 2nd Precinct, and just, a very, very personable officer, someone that was very well liked by the men and women of the department. Any command that he worked in, he always excelled in, and he was a credit to the department. And it's a tremendous loss for our agency.
Authorities are asking anyone with information to come forward, and they're offering a reward, which we've just learned has been increased to $30,000 for tips that lead to a conviction. That's the latest here live in the Newark newsroom. I'm Briana Vannozzi. Jim?